In real estate sales, if you're not buying real estate, if you're not investing and buying product, you really don't have a retirement. And so living in the Silicon Valley where it's pretty expensive to live, I knew that if I don't invest into real estate, that I'm not going to have a retirement.
I am blessed to introduce you guys to Mr. Frank Herman, who has been in real estate since 2005, doing JV partnerships, and became a full-time investor in 2021, which is hard to believe with your track record, right? And I know prior to that, gained experience with Wells Fargo, helped build his foundation in operations and investing. And over the last 6 years, the teams and partnerships he's been a part of acquired more than $100 million in real estate assets. Primary focus on student housing, multifamily, generally 150 units or larger, 2,000 or newer, nice Class A types, and creating multiple exits from one property instead of relying on a single disposition strategy, which I know a lot of people would be interested to hear about.
Yep.
And collectively, over 1,000 multifamily doors, gone full cycle on a couple of projects, currently working to go full cycle on your third. And you sold over 500 condo units through conversions and partnerships and raised over $10 million. So, welcome, Frank. Good to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. You want to fire away or you want me to do my intro?
Yeah, no, I was just hoping I did your bio well. Didn't know if there's anything else I missed or you wanted to add, but if not, we can jump right into it.
Yeah,
Um,
no, you did well. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. So I wanted you to briefly describe your business model, what you're doing right now, and just kind of lay it on us.
Yeah, so what we do is we go in, we buy student housing assets that are purpose-built student housing. We try to stay in the Southeast Conference schools because that's where a lot of the capital's at. And what we do is we go and buy the purpose-built student housing, and then we convert them to condos, and then we sell them to parents, investors, make them Airbnbs, game day rentals. And so there's multiple exit strategies with that model. And so that's what I look for. Those are the asset type that I'm looking for in our company right now.
Fantastic. And what motivated you to pursue a career in multifamily commercial real estate to begin with?
Yeah, so my background is in real estate sales. So I've been in real estate for 21 years now. This year will be 21 years, but I cut my teeth in Silicon Valley. And so I was a real estate agent out there, did multiple transactions, was one of the REO agents for Wells Fargo and a lot of the institutions during our last recession, which was in 2006, 2007. And so that kind of gave me the experience for what I'm doing now. And so in real estate sales, if you're not buying real estate, if you're not investing and buying product, you really don't have a retirement. And so living in the Silicon Valley where it's pretty expensive to live, I knew that if I don't invest into real estate, that I'm not going to have a retirement. And so it was right around 2020, 2021 that I started to make that paradigm shift to say I need to get into some long-term passive income that I can set myself up for the future. So that's how I got into the multifamily student housing space.
Gotcha. So we can just blame you for the 2008 financial crisis because you worked at Wells Fargo, right? So
Yeah.
obviously we could put you on trial for that one, Frank, huh?
Yeah.
I'm curious, how did that banking background kind of shape the way real estate differently than someone who a lot of people get into house flipping or they just jump right in? How does that kind of mold the way you look at real estate since you see it from the debt side of things?
Yes. When I got into real estate in '05, like I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. And so just to back up, I was a truck driver. I was 23, 24 years old at the time. And I read my first book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I remember driving my big rig, reading this book when I had some downtime. And I say, man, I need to change my life. I don't want to be a truck driver forever. I want to do something with money, with real estate. And so my wife and I bought our first house in 2004 in San Jose, California. It was 1,200 square feet. And it had mold in there. It was on not the best side of town and 100% financing. And it was $444,000 in 2004. And in 2 years, that property went up to 50. So the equity in that deal went up about 200,000. And so during that process, I was like, oh my goodness, real estate can be pretty lucrative. And so I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. I see all the equity. And then going and answering your question now, when I got into real estate, I really didn't know what I was doing, right? I quit my job, got into sales. I didn't know how to turn on a computer. I didn't know what an email was. I didn't know the difference between an email and a website. So my wife had to help me out there. So there was a huge learning curve. But make a long story short, when I got in there, it just was when you have a goal and you're like, I need to get into this or I need to accomplish this, it just seems like doors just open up, right? And so I was the Lord that opened up certain doors for me to get into the REO space and to work with asset managers and Wells Fargo and Bank of America, which at the time was countrywide. And so then I began to be their agent on selling these properties. And that gave me the experience for what I'm doing 20 years later. And it was one of those just open doors that I didn't even know that was going to benefit my life in the future. But at the time, it really just put food on the table.
See, hey, in 2007, I think a lot of people didn't know the difference between email and internet. It was a little fugazi there for a lot of people, so
Yeah.
no worries there. But hey, it all worked out for you in the end. And so you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad, and hey, I didn't really know what I was doing. How did you acquire the necessary skills and knowledge? Did you have a mentor or a coach or someone that you had in your corner?
Did. And here's what yes. So I'm going to answer the question first, and I'm going to back up. But my first mentoring program was Fortune Builders, and that was in 2012, 2013 timeframe. And that coaching program taught you how to flip houses, taught you how to underwrite, how to do the ARV method and things like that. But the challenge that I had was I didn't believe in myself, and I didn't invest enough into myself to believe that the value was there. But I had a business partner who he was an HVAC contractor, and he said, "Hey, I got some money. You have the skills. Why don't we do this flipping thing?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't got the money." And he's like, "I have it." And he's like, "You've been in real estate for quite some time. You know what you're doing." And so he's like, "Hey, let's go to this seminar." It was Fortune Builders at the time. And I'm like, "All right, we'll go." And so it was like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event. And I went on Friday because Saturday and Sunday had an open house. And Saturday he calls me, "Hey, man, I signed up for this coaching program." I'm like, "Oh, great. That's cool." He's like, "But I want you to be a part of it." I'm like, "Dude, I don't got 15,000 bucks because it was like 30,000 for this coaching program in 2012." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't got that money." And he's like, "Don't worry about it. I'll cover it." He's like, "You have the skills, you have the expertise, I have the money, we'll figure it out." And so that was like my first launch into coaching, into a program that paid dividends on our first deal. And so, anyways, that's how I got into my first coaching program.
Gotcha, gotcha. And I'm curious, when was the first time you went out and tried to raise capital? Like when was that?
That was 2000 and I think it was 17, 18. And here's the crazy thing. I'm good.
No, go ahead.
The first deal that I went and raised capital on, I didn't even know I was raising capital. It just showed up. And here's what I mean by that. Okay. So I knew a guy, and we always say we know a guy, but there was a guy who was a personal trainer, and he said, "Hey, I want to get into the business of real estate. We want to do this and that." I said, "Okay, hey, I'll sit down and talk with you and your business partner." He said, "All right." So we sat down at a BJ's restaurant, and I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" He's like, "Hey, I want to get into real estate and I want to flip houses. We got some money." And I'm like, "All right, cool." I'm like, "How much money do you have?" He's like, "About 500,000." And in 2017, my acquisitions on residential real estate was like 900,000. So I'm like, "Man, that's good, but I really can't do nothing with your 500,000. I use it for rehab, but I really can't do much more with it than putting it to work for rehab." I said, "Because the acquisition is 900,000." I said, "But here, let me just give you some recommendations. Why don't you go out there and go to open houses, go meet some brokers, connect with them?" And so I was being honest, I was being transparent, saying, "Hey, I really can't use your money. Maybe I
Mhm.
can, but just a small part of it." And so I was just being honest, right? I wasn't trying to take their money. And so that was like in October maybe. And so they come back in January and they're like, "Hey, Frank, we want to get together and talk with you." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, cool." So went to BJ's again. I guess that was our spot. And I said, "Hey, last time we talked, you said you had $500,000. And what was the experience going out there and connecting with people?" Man, it was very difficult. I didn't really make those connections, but we want to really invest with you. I said, "We had 500,000 last time. Is that the same amount?" He said, "No, not really. We have 5 million." I said, "Okay, now we can do something with that." And so one of the guys, he cashed out his stock out of Apple. And when he did that, he liquidated 5 million. And then immediately following that, we went into a JV partnership. There was 6 condos in Hawaii that got foreclosed on, and I went out there and I project managed those, and we became a JV partnership. And so that was my first introduction to capital raising, but it really wasn't capital raising. It was just me being honest and saying, "Hey, I can help you. Here's some advice. I really can't help you." And then it just came back. And so that was my first introduction to capital raising.
10 or 9 or 10 years later, it's quite different than finding some guy who sold 5 million of Apple stock.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot different now. And so I'm
Yeah.
I'm curious. from where you started, that was like your first capital raise that you didn't really know
Yeah.
was capital raising. But when you compare that to now, what do you think the
Yeah.
biggest change is in your process of how you go about raising money?
Yes, for us in our model and what we do and the opportunities that we're buying, we're not making offers on every deal that comes across our desk, right? The deals that we're buying are selective. They have to meet the model that we're going after. And so when I'm going after these deals that are on one deal could be a $10 million raise on just private friends and family. I'm calling up my investors. There's been trust that's been built, and they know that when I'm calling, it's because we got a deal or an opportunity that's going to come on the horizon, right? Because we're not calling them 10 times a year saying, hey, here's 10 opportunities. We might call them two or three times. And those two or three times, there's going to be enough equity in that deal for them to get a really good return. And so it's just nurturing those relationships and consistently being in front of them and letting them know, hey, we don't got nothing, but we're working on this, or this is what we're seeing on the market. And it's just a lot of phone calls to that tight knit group of investors that we're going after.
And when it comes to that group of investors, what are some things you implemented to try to establish credibility with them before they ever wrote you a check?
I think it's just being honest and transparent, right? I think a lot of times we as entrepreneurs and people who are driven, there's just something inside us that we want to go after. We want to hit the scoreboard. We want to put the numbers up on the scoreboard. But to build trust, that takes time, right? And me coming to you, Logan, if I said, hey, Logan, how much capital do you have to invest? Oh, I have this much money. I'm going to listen to what your need is. It's not about what's in it for me, it's what's in it for you. And I'm going to listen to what your goals are. I'm going to listen to what's important to you. And I'm going to try to put you in the deal that works for you, not for me. And so if you tell me, hey, I'm conservative, I want a six pref annual, I really want a 2x multiple in 5 years, then I know that's the deal that you want. If you're an investor that's like, hey, I want just a high return, I don't need to be equity partners in the deal, then I know there's another deal for you. So I got to know what you want before I'm going to call you and tell you what I have.
I think that's really important too, because a lot of investors might look for deals that appease them, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the sponsor, the operator, whoever's operating that
Yes.
deal, they might look for, oh, I like deals in Houston. Do your
Yeah.
investors like deals in Houston, right? So
Yeah.
that's a really big piece of that.
Absolutely.
And so I like your answer to that. And obviously now you have a pretty vast list, right? That you can just kind of reach out to a couple times a year. But
Yep.
obviously the investor acquisition process never stops. So both when you were building this network and currently, what are some ways and methods for finding and attracting these investors? Like, did you go to events, just networking through friends and family? Like, how did you build your investor network out?
Yes, when I first started, which was in California, I don't live in California no more. I live in Mississippi, of all places. But started these relationships back in 2014, 2015, right? So some of these investors have been with me for a decade, and they started off with 100,000, and now they're referring friends over to us for 300, 500, a million. And so now that I've proven to them, not just on an acquisition that we're going to buy, but I've proven to them over 10 years that I'm really going to do what's best for you. They're now sending us referrals. And now I'm like, hey, who do you think that this next opportunity would be a good fit for? Send me a referral and let's do a Zoom call or a Teams call. And I'll put them on the call so that there's just this connection. And sometimes they just give me their phone number and I'll reach out to them directly. But now it's just asking for that referral.
So performing for the investors who are friends and family already know and trust you
Yes.
first,
Yeah.
performing for them, showing proof of concept, and then saying, hey, do your golf buddies want to invest too? Right? That's
Yeah.
the example I always use is the golf buddies because
Yeah.
everyone has a friend,
Yeah.
and some people don't have money, but they have friends that do.
Yeah.
So every relationship is important. And I think this is something
Absolutely.
that really good capital raisers know well. You talk to someone and, hey, I make 50 grand a year. Hey, that's okay. I'm still going
Yeah.
to treat you like I would. I'm still going to show you this opportunity and talk to you about it. Because
That's
maybe you
right.
know somebody who it works for, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
referrals are a gold mine for a capital raiser. So I
Absolutely.
like that's your method as well. Do you guys have any kind of marketing strategies when you're ready to promote a deal, or is it just giving a call to your investors? Do you send out a promotional email? Do you invite them to a webinar? What kind of things do you do when you're gearing up to promote that deal?
Yes, I try to do things a little bit more premature, right? So, like for example, like there's a deal we just made an LOI on today, but this deal was sent to me like 2 months ago, right? And when it goes past my first round of, I'm going to dive into it, pass the sniff test, like it's something I think has meat on it. I'm calling my investors right then and there, saying, "Hey, guess what? There's an opportunity that's come my way. It may not materialize for maybe another 90 days. And I think if we were to pursue it, we're not going to close till September." So I already given them a 6 month window to let you know you need to start moving money around if you want to do this deal with me, but I'll keep you in the loop in the process, right? And so I made these phone calls, or I'm sending out emails, and I'm working on behind the scenes on this opportunity, but my investors already know that there may be something coming down the road because they may be in a deal or they may be coming out of a deal and now they're going to put their money somewhere else. But I'm trying to put a place marker for my opportunity. So I'm saying, hey, maybe in 4 or 5 months, we got this opportunity. Where are you at as far as finances? How much capital do you have to deploy? Where's your capital at right now? And do you think this might be a fit for you? And so I'm prematurely priming the pump for these opportunities.
Building anticipation.
Yes.
Building
Yeah.
anticipation, seeing where they're at financially so that LOI is signed, you're getting ready to get into the actual hard commitment phase. You already know, all right, I got these 10 guys. I can go call them. I know where
Yeah.
they're at instead of
Yeah.
scrambling and just calling. You want to
Uh,
look at this deal. They're like,
for
oh, I
sure.
already placed my money because you didn't tell me anything till today. So I think that's really important, priming
Yeah.
your audience. And something that Michael Guthrie says all the time that I stole from him is poll your audience every 30, 60, 90 days. Ask them, what do you
Yeah.
want? What are you
That's right.
looking for?
Yeah.
And then you can go find a deal that suits them instead of like we talked about earlier, the other way around. I think
Yeah.
this deal looks good, but do your investors think it looks good? Which is
That's
ultimately
right.
all that matters.
Yeah. And then
So,
when we go, yeah, and then when we go into that next phase of, let's say the offer gets accepted, the PSA signed, like now we're creating webinars. Now we're creating a pitch deck to send them because now we know that something's in motion. And so that's when the marketing team and everybody starts to get all hands on deck. And then we're going to send that
mhm.
out and start taking some commitments. And so that's how we structure our calls.
Awesome. I really like that approach. And do you have an ideal avatar or investor profile? And if you do, explain why you target that group, it's doctors, engineers, something like that.
Yes. First of all, it's the amount that I'm looking at first, right? So it's like we try to be 100,000 or more. We haven't gone any family office. We haven't gone any PE groups and big check writers. So it's just friends and family. So the avatar is somebody who could be detached from this $100,000 or more for 2 or 3 years. Engineer, somebody who's obviously accredited, but our opportunities are not always an accredited opportunity. But I want an accredited investor that understands investments, that makes really good money. So we usually go for engineers and some doctors. I would say that's our avatar for these capital raises that we've done in the past.
And do they have a primary, especially these higher net worth individuals, right? Because I know a lot of people, 100,000 might be a little high for some
Yeah,
of their investing. Because a lot of people work off of 50
sure.
generally,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah, yeah.
50 to 75.
Yeah.
And so they might have different motivations. So I'm curious, what's your avatar's primary motivations for investing?
Yes, and again, the 100,000 is obviously where we want to be, but there's people
Hmm.
who's coming in less than that, 50,000.
Sure,
But what we don't want is we don't want that 50,000 to be their mortgage payment or their house
sure.
payment or their car payment, right? So I got to really understand from that individual, are you okay with this being a 5 year commitment? With a PPM or our goal is maybe 3 years, but if we have to extend it, are you okay with five? And so we're constantly asking questions. And it's like the deal, right? You're trying to kill the deal to make sure it doesn't work. So a lot of times we want to attract all these investors, which I believe in, but I want to make sure that I'm not getting you into a deal that you don't want to be in. And in 12 months, you're trying to get a buyout clause and you don't want to be a part of the deal. So I really got to pretty much interview and see if this is the right fit for them.
And do they have like, hey, I really want more equity or I want more cash flow? Do they have a preference or is it just, hey, if the no, if the I trust you, Frank, and if you think
Yeah.
this deal makes sense, then I'm open to listening.
Yeah, so with our opportunities, we don't really give equity. We just give them a really good return or a bonus or a waterfall at the end. So what we usually do is we do a pref with monthly distributions. And then when we return the capital, depending on how much capital you invested into our opportunity, you'll get a bonus or a waterfall at the end. But there's no equity in the deal. And so that investor has to be okay with that. So if they're really a high net worth individual, they need depreciation and they need other things. I'm going to let them know up front that this opportunity is not going to provide you that. So do you still want to invest? This is what the returns are going to look like. So you tell me if this is a best fit for you. And so most of the investors, they want mailbox money, right? They want really good returns. And even the high net worth individuals who are making 100, 400, 500,000 a year, they're still okay with mailbox money, with not having any equity in the deal.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And like you said earlier, transparency, right?
Yeah.
Letting them know, hey, this deal doesn't have that. I'm not going to try to wiggle around it with verbiage and confuse you, which some people do.
Yeah.
This is what it is. This is what it isn't. Is this something you're sure you want to do? Because then, as we've all had an investor or two, 12 months later, 6 months later, hey, I don't want to be in this deal.
Yeah.
Right? Being
Absolutely.
transparent will solve a lot of problems in this
Yeah.
business. So I really like that approach as well. Do your investors prefer, I know right now with multifamily, some people are on one side of the fence or the other. Do your investors prefer a single asset type or diversified? I know you guys do the student housing, you've done condos in the past, and all kinds of things. Right now, are they preferring a single asset type or more diversified portfolio across multiple assets?
So a lot of our investors, they're sophisticated. I'm not going to say that all my investors are just 100% committed to me. So I would say that a lot of our investors are diversified. But when I bring them an opportunity, it's going to be student housing to condo conversions. And they know what they're getting themselves into. And this is what I have, right? I don't have family office. I don't do triple net. So when I call them, they know that I'm not going to usually bring those opportunities to them. Now, they may do that with somebody else that I don't know about, but at least with my opportunities, this is the offering that we have for them. But I know that these investors that I've called and have worked with for 10 years, they are diversified in other opportunities because they let me know, hey, Frank, my money is over here and it's going to come back in 2 or 3 more months. And then I ask, so what does that look like? And I think one thing that I would say that I really try to do is I don't try to be nosy, but I'm like, so what is that return looking like? What is that other investor giving you? Like, I don't want to
Mhm.
give somebody five and they're getting 10, right? Or maybe I'm too high and the other person's too low. So I'm going to ask, so what's a good return to you, Logan? Do you want more consistent money throughout the year? Do you want a waterfall? What's important to you? And so I'm going to ask those questions because the reality is, what other opportunities that they're in that are not mine, I'm competing for that capital, right? In a
Mhm.
way. So I need to know what usually their appetite is. And so that's I ask those questions too.
That's a really good question. What's a good return to you?
Yeah.
I don't know if enough people ask that. You would think it's a no-brainer,
Yeah.
but some people are so concerned with obviously building the relationship and learning about them that they might not stop to think, hey, what do you think a good return is? Even if they're
Yeah.
sophisticated, right? Someone could
Yeah.
be sophisticated, but they've only ever invested in stocks. So they don't know what a good real estate return is to them. And that's a
Yeah.
place where you can educate them and say, oh, I have this real asset compared to stocks or crypto or whatever.
Yeah.
So I like that. And I want to get some more into investor relations and nurturing leads. And but before we do, I know I wanted to touch on your the way that you guys exit your deals, right,
Yeah.
which are a little more creative. I wanted you to get some more into that versus what seems to be more run-of-the-mill ways that operators exit their dispo strategy, right? I know
Right.
you touched on that when we sent this stuff over. So I wanted to hear that strategy that focuses on multiple exits. If you could touch a little bit on that.
Yeah. So I heard this Jim Rohn. If anybody's ever heard of Jim Rohn, he's long gone now. But I heard one of his podcasts or inspirational audibles, and he said, "Hey, I interviewed Neil Armstrong and asked Neil, hey Neil, so what was the success or how did you get to the moon? And what was your process?" And Neil said, you got to solve two problems. The first problem is how you're going to get there. And the second problem you got to solve is how you're going to get back. And you don't leave until you solve both those problems, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of us know how to get into a deal, but the question is, how do you get out of the deal? How do you get your investors' capital back out? And so all of our opportunities that we're buying as student housing, I'm diligently working on the exit strategy. I don't care about getting into the deal. I'm trying to figure out how do I strategize to get my investors' capital out in 12 months, 18 months, 36 months. What's plan A? If plan A doesn't work, what's plan B? What happens if we have another recession? I'm strategizing all these things to try to figure out how do I get out before I get in. And so that kind of segues me into this, to your question, is when I was looking at student housing, there was a property on 10X. Also, 10X is the auction platform, but it was on a LoopNet in 2021. I just moved from California to Mississippi, and it was on LoopNet of all places. And it was a teaser price. It was like $4 million for 16 units, Class A, Ole Miss student housing. And I literally got up off my seat. I drove down to Oxford, which is like 50 minutes for me. And when I drove into the development, it was 216 units and 108 of them were detached houses, like single family houses, but it was being ran as student housing. And so, with my real estate background, it just naturally came to me. This is not a student housing opportunity that we're going to keep and hold. This is going to be a condo conversion. I'm going to plat out these properties and I'm going to sell them off individually. And with all those 16 years at the time, years of experience, I looked at it, I underwrote it. What's the ARV number? What can we sell them for? What can we buy them for? And so I'm working on all these numbers. And then I brought it to a partner that I partnered with, and they were into the multifamily traditional syndications. And I'm like, you guys, you got to listen to me. This is a different model. It may not make sense to you, but hear me out. And here's what the returns could be to us. Here's what the returns could be to our investors. And that was the model that kind of launched us to where we're at today. And so I look at real estate as what's the highest and best use for this property, and then how do I get my investors' capital back out if I pursue the asset.
Gotcha. What, so you looked at it as a, hey, let me plot these out, sell them off individually. Have you guys ever bought a student housing and done a buy and hold, or have they all been using this conversion model?
Yeah, so in the last 5 years, well, 4 years now, we've just sold them out. And so now my strategy is going to pivot because you get taxed a lot of money when you do a lot of sales. So
Hmm.
in the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, we've sold over 543 condos. We're going out of our third full cycle opportunity. And so now I think moving forward, because we're getting taxed so much, I'm gonna pivot the business plan to sell some off and keep some as long term so that we can have passive income for the future.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah, I didn't know much about as someone who's from the South and has been to a lot of SEC schools, when we first talked about this months ago, I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. Go to the SEC, get some student housing, sell them off because they are very desirable towns. Because for those of you that don't know, if you go to Athens or Gainesville or Auburn, any of these schools, that's the only thing that's there is the school. There's not a
Yeah,
city, really. Oxford, there's not really cities in these. It's just the university. The university is the city.
yeah,
And I'm assuming with those buy and holds, you can Airbnb some of those out, turn them into some very valuable rentals for the
yes.
alumni that come to town. So it's a very unique business model. I really like it since
So
I
here's
probably
the
overpaid if I've overpaid for an Airbnb or two going to some games.
well, so again, when you create the value for the consumer, they're going to
Mhm.
come and buy it. So here's what I mean by that. Okay. I'm sure a lot of us here on our call today has gone to college. Mom and dad may have paid for it, but mom and dad cannot write off the monthly check that they're writing to the college for your dorm. So if I cannot write off your monthly expense, then I'm just throwing this money away. But with the value that we could bring to them is, hey, if you put down 20% on this 3 bedroom, 3 bath condo, your daughter or son can live in one unit and you can rent out the other two, which will probably maybe break out even or cash flow you. Secondly, you could write this off on your Schedule C. In 4 years, you could sell it. And if the market goes up, the appreciation and the equity will pay off. It'll give you your down payment back. Plus, it'll probably pay for your kids' tuition and you get to write it off. So it becomes a
Mhm.
win-win in all angles, right? And so it's not just creating value and for me as the investor, for my LP investors, but it's also creating value for the parent that might want to put their kid or son or daughter in there or make it an Airbnb or what have you. It works for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Really cool business model. I'm glad you shared some more about that. And getting back to the capital side of it, obviously your list is mostly like friends and family, people you've known for a
Yeah.
long time. Do you do anything to maintain those long-term relationships? I love asking this question because I always get some funny responses, like newsletters, direct mail, sending a bottle of wine, birthday cards. Do you do anything like that for your
Yeah,
investors?
yeah, I do. And I'm gonna let you know, yes, I do, but I wish I was more consistent at it. But I think it was last year for Christmas, right? Because again, 2025, we didn't buy any assets, right? So if I keep calling you saying, "Hey, Logan, how you doing? How you doing?" I'm nurturing the relationship, but the reality is I don't got nothing for you, right? I don't have nowhere to put your capital. But at the end of 2025, I sent all my investors a book called The Handoff Investor for Christmas, and then I sent out some like baskets from I think it was C's or Amazon or whatever, but it was like nuts and cashews, and it was just a nice little touch, right? That hey, I'm thinking about you. Here's a real estate book, and here's some cashews or whatever goodies. And so it was just another way to stay in front of them. We do mailing, marketing mailers, not every month, but for me, it's more I'm on the phones talking with them and then sending out some gifts. So that's how I usually stay in front of them. But it's not like a weekly newsletter or anything like that.
Gotcha, gotcha. And obviously, we've already talked about making sure funds are available
Yep.
before you take something down, right? Priming the audience. But
Yep.
obviously, another way to do that is a fund. Have you guys ever thought of doing a fund for your properties? And if so or not, why?
So when I first got into capital raising, so before I got into doing these bigger deals, I did do a series fund with my business partner, and we would raise capital and we would put it in different operators' property, right? And so it wasn't like a fund to fund. We did it specifically for individual property. So we did do that. But I think for where we're going in our company, yes, we would love to buy maybe three, four opportunities a year. But if those opportunities do not materialize and we don't have it, like, yeah, we have a fund with capital, but I really can't deploy it. And I don't want to go deploy capital just to deploy it because I have to. Now it's for me, it's
Mm,
like I want to be strategic with that money and the opportunity that I know is going to work. And so what I'm doing is I'll come to partners like you, Logan, where I'm like, hey, Logan, here's an opportunity that we're going to do your capital raising for not just maybe an opportunity that I have, but for multiple people. And so I'm going to come with the professionals that do this and may be interested in my opportunity rather
mm.
than keep trying to raise funds for stuff I don't have. And so, anyways, I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah.
that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good answer because even though, like Tim, our whole thing right now, we're talking about fund to funds.
Yeah.
We love the model; it's fantastic. But doing a
Yeah.
fund for your own deals is a lot different, right?
Yes.
And I like your answer because, like at UP at the event, I had so many people talking to me about starting a fund, and I was like, you need to start a fund
Yeah.
because if you're not doing, if you're not raising $5-10 million a year, if you're not doing 2-3 deals a year, why
Yeah.
not syndicate? Why not
Yeah.
do JV? Like, why do you need one? Because
Yeah.
you can run into this situation where 2025, you just don't do a deal because
Yeah.
none of them are good enough for you. But all of 2025, you've been raising this money anticipating you're gonna now you have to deploy it.
Yes.
In a lot of cases, you have to or give the money back or pay
That's right.
penalties. So sometimes the fund can be a hindrance,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I like that answer. We didn't do it just to do it. You get into the fund once you think, okay, I'm definitely going to do this many deals this year. I'm definitely
Mhm.
going to need this much money. Put it one place.
Yeah.
So I like that answer.
One thing, and my answer is tied to past experience. And
Mhm.
maybe when we start acquiring 200 million, $300 million in assets a year, then maybe I'll consider it. But right now, that's not where we're at. But
Yeah.
I remember when we were flipping a lot of properties in California, you have your goal. Hey, I want to flip 60 properties a year. And the goal up there on the scoreboard is 60, right? And Q1, you're at five. And then Q2, you're at 10. And that number is 60. And you're like, dude, I'm not going to get there. So what you start doing is you start reaching for deals that are in your sandbox, and you start reaching for opportunities because you want to hit that 60, right? And so I put ourselves, my partner and I, in a position where I went outside my sandbox, reaching for an opportunity that didn't pencil, and it was probably the only deal that I lost money on because I was trying to make that deal work because I needed to hit a number. So when I look at a fund to fund model or where we're at in our own business, I'm not going to go try to reach to go buy something if it doesn't fit my model, and then I'm just buying an asset that doesn't work for me. That's my experience in with that answer. So
Yeah. And sometimes it takes that experience to know, hey, I shouldn't do that because I hear it all the time. I want 500 units.
yeah,
Okay. What does that mean? What is
yeah,
500 units? You know this. There's a big difference between 500 units in Oxford, 500 units in LA, right?
yeah,
Or in Dallas, right? That's a
yeah,
big difference in what that 500
absolutely.
number means. And so we urge people, don't focus on the amount of units or the amount of deals. Are you doing good deals? Are you making money? Are your investors getting their money back? That's really what people, I think, the outside of the, hey, I want to do 1,000 units. That 1,000 units is great. Don't get me wrong. But what does
Yeah,
that mean, right? What does a
yeah,
1,000 units mean to you? So I really
yeah,
like that answer of, hey, I tried it. I went outside my sandbox and it didn't work. So now I know, especially in this market,
yeah,
people are reaching for deals and it's important we got to stay strong, right?
yeah,
Everyone, we have to stay strong and not put ourselves and our investors in a bad position to lose money.
yeah. So And
which is
another
easier said than done.
Yeah, and another thing to add to that is if you look at the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, right? And I think it's in chapter 5. He talks about general knowledge and specialized knowledge, right? And there was I think it's chapter 5. It's pretty cool where this attorney was grilling forward, and he's like, "So how many British people here?" And he was asking all these questions that were irrelevant to his business. And I
Mhm.
think it was Ford. He said, "You know what? I have a button that I can push." And I can find the smartest people in my company that can answer those questions, right? And so I have to identify what am I really good at and what specialty does Logan have? And I'm going to partner with somebody who specializes in capital raising or marketing. And I'm going to allow them to be the specialist. I'm going to push that button, make that phone call. And I'm going to do what I do best. I'm going to let you do what you do best. And together, we're going to make it happen. And so, anyways, that's my belief in growing the company and having specialized partners.
Awesome. I love that answer. Obviously, you in a unique way experienced the last market crash we had in 2008. The last 12 to 18 months have been a very interesting time. What are your predictions for the market moving forward, and how are you preparing to take advantage of what's happening right now in commercial real estate at large? But what you do is multifamily adjacent, right? So I'm curious how you're preparing to approach that. What are your predictions?
Yeah, so I really believe that whether it was the last recession in 2007, 8, I wasn't in multifamily at that time. But what I do know is that in every down market, there's always capital being ready to be deployed. It might be more cautious, but it's being ready to be deployed because when there's blood in the streets, that's when people buy, right? And so when I see this, a lot of notes maturing and you see a lot of deals going back to the servicing company, that's a warning to me that things are coming down the pipeline and I have to be ready to move when that opportunity fits my sandbox. But if it doesn't fit, I'm not going to buy it. So I got to be patient with the capital and with my investors' capital in a good market or even a down market. But when that opportunity shows up, we're ready to strike. And so moving forward and going back to your question, I really believe that capital is ready to be deployed in this market that we're going into, but it's more cautious. And that's where trust comes in. Hey, Frank, if you really believe that this is a good opportunity in this market with interest rates or the treasury being at 4.5, I'm trusting you to make that decision, right? And so, again, I have to be patient with the capital in the coming market when I see opportunities, but does that opportunity fit my sandbox?
Yeah, I'm getting a theme from you, Frank. Patience and transparency. I think they
Yeah,
go very well together. That's what I'm getting from everything you're telling me, which is really hard. It's really easy to say, but it's really hard to be patient. It's really hard to stay disciplined when you don't do a deal all of 2025. And it's like, got to keep staying patient instead of doing a deal just to do it. So I really like that. And I do agree with you on the capital side. It is more
yeah,
cautious. We talked a lot about this at UP. It is something that people have been on the sidelines. That means that there's more opportunity. There
yeah,
also might be more bad deals. And so we have to be really careful about how we deploy.
yeah.
But there's a lot of capital out there, right? It's hard to raise
Absolutely.
money right now, but it is there, right? You just have to
Yeah.
push the right buttons. So,
And here's what, again, this is something I had to get over, right? And I'm not going to speak for everybody. But when you don't go and buy a deal for a whole year, you think you're not doing something right. Because we are trained to say, go after it, go after it, go after it, get after it. And I would say a lot of times we size each other up by, hey, how many deals do you have under management? How many doors do you have? You're sizing each other up by that, right? But the reality is last year I didn't get into any bad deals because we didn't buy any. So when I go and do my annual goals, that's a win for me. I didn't get any of my investors into a bad deal. So that's a win. But I can beat myself up and say, man, I didn't deploy any capital this year. We didn't buy anything. What was the win? We're going full cycle on our second deal. We're exiting our third deal. Capital's coming. People's money's getting back returned to them. So money's coming back. So I got to look at the positive things and not focus on, again, the scoreboard and look at what I didn't do. Actually, that could be a win, right? Not buying any
mhm,
assets.
find wins where you can, right?
Yes,
I'm curious if you could go back and restart your real estate journey, would you do anything differently?
I would. I would have built better systems, and I would have found individuals like yourself, Logan, where they're specialized, they know what they're doing, they're focused, and I would come alongside those people and find out what my superpower is and say, how can we complement each other, or how can I learn from you? I would get into a mentoring program and invest into myself. Right. And I think that was the one thing that it took me, oh my goodness, it probably took me maybe 10 years to realize the value that I brought to the table. Because here's the thing, I always thought that money in my bank account or money, not money in my bank account, created, I had no value. That's not the truth. I have all of the years of experience. I have all of these expertise. I have all of these things. I may not have money in my bank account, but that does not mean I don't bring value to the table. So if I come to you and I say, "Hey, man, here's a great opportunity. We can hit a 2x in 18 months. I have no money and I'm willing to not take an acquisition fee. I'll roll in my sleeves. I'll get into this, but I want to be part owner. And you had all the money. I don't need to have money to bring value. I just have to bring opportunities." And so going back to your question, I would have really reinvested into myself and created that certainty that I have value. And I would have came around mentors and got into coaching events. I would go to networking events. So again, it's creating a community, but also knowing your superpower is what I would have done differently at an early age. And then obviously built your systems and create the systems to help you be that company that you desire to be.
Absolutely. And speaking of systems, is there any tools, software, anything that you rely on in your business that you recommend other people use, whether it's marketing, acquisitions, underwriting? Is there any kind of software or tools you use regularly you recommend someone else might use?
Yes, I have a CoStar account. Yardi is a great thing for looking at opportunities for student housing for multifamily. You can get the owner's contact info. So those are the two sites that I pay for. And then we have our underwriter. He's out of the country, but anytime I have a new opportunity that comes my way, I send it to him and he does all my underwriting. He helps me come up with the business plan. We're going to sell this condo. We're going to sell 30 condos or 50 condos in a year with the cash flow coming in. So I found a strategist that helps me with that. And then we have a Zoho CRM that tracks our incoming capital or soft commitments. And that also helps us to send out newsletters and emails and marketing materials that will be tracked. And that's a pretty inexpensive cost as far as a CRM. So those are some of the things that we use. Then Syndication Pro or Agora, when you're getting your commitments for your opportunities, those are some of the platforms and portals that we use.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Everyone's got their tools. I always like to share with the audience what they
Yeah.
use. Maybe someone can try it out too. And so you've given us a lot of info. What advice would you give to someone who aspires to have 100 million in AUM, raise $10 million, but doubts their ability to achieve that goal? What kind of advice would you tell?
I would probably change the question of can I raise 100 million? And I would probably say, can I become the kind of person and build a company that the people would trust with $100 million? Can I be the person that they can trust with 100 million, right? Because it starts off with a million, right? Or it starts with 50,000. If you could trust me with 50,000, it's going to grow to maybe 100,000. And a $100,000 person might know a rich uncle and they have a million. And so we're always looking for the 100 million, but can I be that person that somebody's going to trust with the $100 million, right? And so again, it comes back to reinvesting back into myself. It's coming back and it's diving, it's getting my mindset right. It's listening to podcasts, it's listening to how to become a better leader. It's all of these things are helping you and training you to be that $100 million leader or that $100 million CEO. And so I would reinvest back into yourself or into myself. That would be probably one of the starts to becoming that person.
I love that answer. I don't think I've gotten that answer before. Anyone else who we've interviewed, don't take this the wrong way. But that's probably one of my favorite answers to that question because I always ask it because everyone always gives a different take on it. But I like that approach of, hey, don't worry about that. Worry about becoming the kind of person someone would trust with. Because we have a story that Tim tells that we had an investor invest with Hero who started with 50 grand and this year they wrote over $1 million check, right? So
Yeah.
it is a gradual process. You're not going to go get generally $500,000 checks off the bat. People want to build trust with you, right? And so becoming that person that someone trusts with 100, 2, 3, 4, $500,000 is usually more important than how can I get to 100 million, right? What systems do I need? It's more about what kind of person are you. So I love that answer. You've been really great, really generous, Frank, sharing your knowledge with us today. How can the audience, both live and the people listening to the recording, how can they support or get back to you? And what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I'll put my contact here in the chat. If anybody knows any lenders or student housing owners or brokers, strategic partners, that'd be one way to give back to me. But for me, I really wanted to provide value today. And so if anybody ever wants to pick my brain, can put my contact info in the chat box. But I'm really big on, again, just giving back. And I would say that the partnerships and the relationships that I have now, some of them started 10 years ago, some of them were 5 years ago, and now they materialize. And now you're doing great opportunities and you're impacting lives of others and investors and parents and students and things like that. Sometimes that partnership doesn't materialize for a couple years because you're going to see if they're still in the game in 2 or 3 years or 4 years. But that opportunity, that partnership might progress or materialize down the road. And so again, it's not just nurturing your investors, but it's nurturing your partners like me and you, Logan, right? It's nurturing that relationship and constantly just talking and connecting with one another. So if anybody would love to connect with me, I'm happy to connect, but that's what my request is. Yep.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, you've been fantastic with your time and your knowledge. I really appreciate you coming.